Hi, everyone. My name's Andrew, and I'm the chair of the Internet Production Alliance. It's good to have you here today, and I'm grateful to our speakers today for coming back to share some of the work now that they've spoken about before, but now that the project's been finished. And it's about some new tools for hardware search based on the Open Know-how standard, the discoverability standard. And the story goes with this that the community came together to create a standard in 2019 to make it easier for people to find hardware designs online, and then started rolling that out. It got taken up by some platforms. There were some versions of it, different versions of it that were developed and put into use on different platforms. But it was basically fundamentally all about the same thing, which is about trying to make it easier to find hardware designs on the internet. Part of the work then became about, rather than just having a standard, having tools based on that standard for people to be able to actually use the standard. And one of the tools that's been developed is around search. There's been previous attempts at developing a search engine for this. There's other tools like Open Know-how Manifest Writing tool and so on. But we're very glad that earlier this year, Open-Source Ecology Germany was able to secure a grant from the Next Generation Internet Search program and was able to develop the beginnings of a search ecosystem for hardware designs based on the Open Know-how standard. So for those of you who have attended before, you'll be probably, attended in the June meeting. You'll probably be recognizing some of what we'll be talking about today. But the idea is that you will be able to spend a bit more time quizzing Peter and Robin and Tim, if he is able to join us, to find out how you might use the tools that they've set up. So I'm going to be handing over to them shortly, but I want to take the opportunity of the community call to provide a little bit of an update about the Internet of Production and just a general overview first. The Internet of Production's main projects, as I talked about it earlier in the year, have come to an end, and those projects have been focusing on makerspaces, particularly in Europe and Africa. And over the last few months, we've been a smaller group, a smaller team, have been working on developing ideas around the distributed local manufacture of medical devices and fundraising and organizing a community and a campaign around that topic. We've been putting together some ideas around an event for distributed quality management, which I'll talk about next. And we've been looking at assistive devices as well as a potential area. We've also been discussing in the community a little bit around the idea of the manufacturing commons and trying to publish that. And we're looking at publish on something on the manufacturing commons, and we're looking at the idea of developing an open hardware ecosystem support initiative as well. So there's a few different things in the pipeline, but there'll be more announcements as we make progress into 2026. So the recent events are all covered in our recent newsletter, which I sent out a couple of weeks ago. And this has reports from a number of the events that Internet of Production team members have attended over the last few months since June. There's lots and lots of links. It's a bit of a bumper newsletter, so you can spend a bit of time digging into some of the different activities we've been part of and understanding our ecosystem a bit. There's a few QR codes coming up on the next couple of slides, so you might want your screenshots ready or your phones ready. But yeah, a lot more of the updates from the Internet of Production can actually be found in the latest edition of the newsletter. The main thing I want to plug today is an event that's coming up at the beginning of December. And Victoria, who's on the call today from Open Source Medical Supplies, and Robert Reed from Public Invention Lab are co-hosting these online events. And we're trying to do a bit of a show and tell all about ideas, innovations, approaches to how on earth we might do distributed quality management. So in a paradigm of production which is highly distributed, where one item might get made only once or twice in a particular manufacturing location, but then thousands of them making the same thing around the world. So normal quality management systems, which are based on repetition and centralization, don't really apply. We're trying to figure out what systems could be developed for distributed quality management. And quality management, quality assurance, quality control is a huge barrier to the scaling of distributed manufacturing and network local production. And the space is ripe for innovation. There's lots of incumbents in this field, and there's a lot of centralization, and it needs to keep up with the democratization of manufacturing that we're seeing at the moment, that the Internet of Production's trying to enable, and it's all about. So these events are a show and tell. So this is an invitation to all of you who have an interest in this topic to come and speak. And if you know anyone who can come and speak, please share this with them. So it could be a standard, it could be a documentation tool, it could be a documentation platform, it could be technical innovations, universities in the US that are putting cameras inside 3D printers to better check the quality of what's being made. It could be about materials testing. It could be about education and training. It could be about learning from parallel systems. It could be about warranties and insurance programs. We're interested in basically a whole range of different ideas, innovations, and approaches to how we might solve the problem or rise to the challenge of doing distributed quality management of distributed production, distributed manufacturing in the future. You don't have to have a proven prototype or a model. It could just be an idea or an approach you want to share. And you'd be very welcome to come along and share it. And the idea is that we would have people speaking just for a few minutes. So it's a bit of a quick fire series of ideas being shared, hopefully to inspire and to raise awareness, to connect the community a little bit. To try and make it easier for people, we're doing 2 editions of this in for different time zones. We're doing something that's more favorable for Europe, Asia, and Africa, a webinar on the 3rd of December, and we're doing a time that's more favorable for the Americas and the Pacific region on the 4th of December. So those are the 2 QR codes there. And if you're interested in speaking, or if you're not available on those days and would like to upload a video, please do let us know. We're going to be recording those events. Thanks, Anna, for your question. We're going to be perhaps using some of the findings or the ideas, or even the sense of community that we hope will emerge from these gatherings, to try and figure out if we could apply for funding, perhaps from the National Science Foundation Platform for Open Source Ecosystems grant, to see if there's a possibility for some scoping funding, basically, to explore this area in a bit more depth, rather than just having a show and tell, like digging into it a little bit more deeply. So this is the next event, conference that we're organizing. It's going to be online. And yeah, we're looking for people who want to share their ideas and their innovations with us. So those are the QR codes. Sign up, let us know. And please do share it. And then we've got some community calls coming up as well. So in a month's time, we'll be hearing from Lewis Holbrook and Sarah Hutton about a skills system that they've been working on. And this is based on the People and Skills specification of the Internet of Production Alliance. This is a way of trying to help figure out who could make a particular hardware product in a particular place. So I'm thinking of manufacturing capabilities not just as the geographic location of machines, which is taken up by the Open Know-how standard, but also the skills and the people who might be able to use those machines and to make those products, for the people you would actually contract with. And they've been working on a slightly novel sort of sovereign identity-based approach to implementing the people and skills specification. Nathan, who's on the call with us today, has been working on what he's called an open hardware engine. And he'll be presenting a little bit of the tools, the software that he's developed on the community call in January. And then we have Jay Simmons, who years ago was working on a project that he called the Open Design Engine. And Jay and I met for the first time at the Open Source Hardware Association conference in Edinburgh earlier this year. And it's really quite interesting to see some of what he was doing even sort of 15 years ago in this space, and how that's manifested in some of the lessons he's learned. So that should be quite an interesting session, particularly for those of us interested in open know-how. And then James Smith in February will be talking about the Manifold app, which is an open source software for people who want to publish and share their hardware designs online. So rather than always hosting your designs on someone else's platform, this is a tool for you to host your own platform more easily. So I'm looking forward to hearing from James. But today, I think we now have Timm with us as well. Welcome, Timm. Welcome back from Uganda, Timm. Sorry, I've got two screens going on, so I'm looking in two different places. Peter and Robin, and I'm very grateful to the three of you for the work that you've done with others at Open-Source Ecology Germany as well, implementing the grant that you secured from the Next Generation Internet Initiative, the search program of that, trying to improve the adoption of the Open Know-how Discoverability standard by offering search tools around it and developing a search ecosystem. So we covered the work you've done so far up to June, in the June webinar, the June community call. The project hadn't quite finished then. It has now finished. So we might do a recap of the tools that have been developed. But really today, and I shared it in the run-up in the newsletters to today, I shared a recording of the community call from June, and some of the information, some of the blog posts and things that Open Source Ecology Germany has published on it. But just in case you haven't read all of that, we'll do a recap of what's been produced. But the purpose of today is almost to allow people to ask questions and encourage more interest and involvement in an invitation for you to come and play with these search tools, both as users, but also as developers as well. If I've got that right, chaps. Oop, that's the next slide. So that's the last slide. So I'm going to stop sharing and hand over. Who should I pick on first? Timm, Robin? Do one of you want to go first?
Yeah, let me go first.
Timm, thank you. Over to you.
Still a bit of outer space, as you can see on my image. I literally just landed from Uganda, so start trying to adjust a little bit the climate here in Germany. But let me go on with the first intro, and then maybe Peter can add, or I don't know, I think Robin didn't want to present today, but what we will see. So anyway, can you hear me well? Okay.
We hear you well, yeah.
Just to clarify on that point. So maybe again, for the ones, I mean, I don't know if, do I have an overview of who's here? Oh yeah, I can see some people that might have not gotten the full overview yet of what we had been doing. And so I think also it's good to summarize that again. So let me actually share my screen. Give me a second. While that is, I can already share in the chat in case I find the chat here. There we go. Not so used to Zoom. All right, here you go. That's the website that currently basically presents all the results and everything that we have been doing. But I will guide you through a little bit so that we have an overview. Okay, on that page you will find a PDF as well. So I'll share my screen. Yeah, there I found the button, which is, this is the one. All right, hope you can see my screen now. So
yeah,
one of those areas you'll find the overview of the project. So which is this, for example, if you open that PDF, you can basically see what I'll be going through now. So, I mean, you're all familiar with the Open Know-how standard. So, of course, this was a key part of this project. With this project funded by NGI Search, we focused actually on the whole ecosystem behind, or not behind, actually around the Open Know-how, right? So one key thing that we were aiming at and which we reached so far is that the whole tool chain behind designing ontologies, such as the Open Know-how standard, based especially on RDF and in general linked open data context needed to be really improved, right? So the whole tool chain was not really available yet to build that kind of that kind of standard properly, or do automated checks and so on. So the main work, especially the work that Robin was been doing and Peter helping him, was designing such tools, right? On the one hand, it was linters, and on the other hand, it was about the pretty printer and so on. So we had those specific tools already in place in some cases. I don't know, you can have a full overview of, if you're really more into the tech details, I'll spare you that right now, but if you're more into the tech, you can see the whole list of things that we, or especially Robin, was working on. So there's really a lot that had happened in that time. We had a tough time schedule, like I think in some like 6 to 8 months to finish everything. So it was really tough. But we reached there. And apart from that website, and apart from all those tools that you can have a look if you're more into the technical side of it and development, I think the most important part is that the aim was also to improve on the way the data is scraped and the data is actually then put into a triple database. So this is what happened on the server end. There's another approach that we're aiming to, but it's also yet just really for the ones that are into development. It's not yet meant for production ready, to have different repository or areas or different scrapers and different ways of collecting the data, to be a little bit more independent and have a distributed way of collecting such data and then feeding it into, for example, our triple database. Could be any, right? The server could be copied, could be done on other contexts. So our main approach was to use that kind of tool chain to then filter out specifically the open source hardware projects out there and presenting it on a website, which is another one that's also visible on that website. If you actually want to go there, I'll just give you one hint so that you're not confused. You need to hit first that filter button and really make sure that the details that you want to filter with your entry through are active. I saw some people that in the first, I don't know, it might be browser thing, that these were inactive, so you won't find anything. But in case you do, you can actually find that. Because the triple database, the linked open data context, is not as fast as, I don't know, standard stupid databases that are just more static. So the whole linked data approach still will be needing a little bit more technical development, but this is our first beta page, so you can check it out. It's actually available under search.tech.open-source ecology. I hope we can also link back to the Open Know-how domain in the future in that context. Let me actually share that also in the chat. And please be aware that there's one major challenge that we have to tackle yet, which is identification, right? So how do you know that if you find a certain project on GitHub, GitLab, their own hosted GitLab, and maybe also adding on some other extras on Thingiverse, for example, for specific 3D printing context, how do you match those, right? If these are, or the forks that a certain platform has, for example, how do you know that this is the exact same project? Maybe it even has a different title, which is the most up-to-date project. So there are quite a lot of connected challenges to that. So that this is also one of the reasons why you might be able to find multiple results of the same project if you're searching right now. So it's literally a demo of the technology behind that. But this would be the next step, to really use that kind of search engine in the background and improve it on that. So we are not search engine experts, right? So that's why I think the main focus on this project, I think I'm repeating myself now, is really has been going in that back end of developing ontologies. I think if Peter wants to say a few words about this, the linter that we have been open sourcing through that project with a partner, that would be now the moment. Maybe you want to say a few words on that. But then I would also go and head back to where we are, because I might have one little extra brought to the table that nobody knows so well right now. But we have been, continuing a little bit on that project end regarding an editor. But Peter, do you want to say a few words on that matter?
About the tools that we created? Well,
the linter part specifically, but if you have more things to add, sure.
Well, so I think so you presented the front end. So it was basically two teams: the back end people that were basically me and Robin, and then the front end people that created the website. The front end people were not completely used to work with linked data. They were more adapted to just normal databases. So that is why maybe I could share my screen.
Yeah, I think I have to stop mine.
Yeah, so let me see. Yeah, so that's why the search, so you need to have different queries. But in any case, so if you do a search here, you get some results. I'm a bit intrigued by an Armageddon resistant night lamp here. So here you can see things and you can click the manifest, you can open it, and then you get some metadata about this project. So I guess what I wanted to say is that if you're interested in using these backend tools that we created that are also underlying here, so if you want to build on this, then there is this repository, the Elephant repository, with a pretty printer and some regular just some tools that allow you to work with linked data. And I guess this is also a place where you can see updates on this. And I guess I was surprised by this, and Tim hinted towards that, I guess. So I didn't even know about it. So I think the most important, so we discussed the technical details in a previous meeting, and I think the front end is perhaps the best thing to take a look at. And if you want to do something with the data, then the tools that are presented in this repository and this repository, I'll paste the links in the chat. Those are very useful to build on the stuff that we did. Can you see? Yeah. Let me just paste those links into the... one is already there. Yeah. And then this is another. And I think on the main website, there is this link that has all the repositories. That we worked on. And perhaps also to emphasize why we use linked data, because that allows us to basically, we have an ontology, which is basically a vocabulary with which we can indicate what various types of information are. And so it becomes this is sometimes something that's called a semantic web, and we get basically a distributed database, and we can query multiple repositories and have basically the same kind of metadata tags for all these things. So that is basically the background behind this work. Shall I hand it over to you, Tim, and maybe the editor, or?
Yeah, it's fine. If I mean, we had this one cooperation with Maria, right? That might be at least worth mentioning. Like the go-to page where you would check your linked open data ontologies is now a collaborator in the game. I think that was a really good one that we achieved. But like you said, if someone really wants to dive into that, it's probably easy if you go on the website and see all the relevant repositories on that. If you want to work with the actual data, which might be maybe more the Tiger group that I see here in the call, is also worth checking out the repository that Peter mentioned. There's one more thing, that the ontology itself was also improved, right? So the Open Know-how version was improved. So I think it would be really good if we could upgrade the Open Know-how website a little bit on that end. So that's definitely an open to do. Currently, if you go there, you find all kinds of information on the version 1, but now it would be really good to also update on the version 2.0 and the following minor changes, right? So definitely something that should be done in the coming months. Yeah, maybe there are questions, because I could continue about a few things that we did, but I think maybe it's more better to have an idea what the current questions are in the room and what we should go in depth.
Did you want to? I wasn't quite following you there, Tim. Did you want to say something about an editor?
Yeah, wait for that.
Okay. But I think Nathan's unmuted, and Robert has raised his hand. So let's go to Nathan first, please. Thank you for your presentation.
Yeah, this is great. I'm really excited to see this.
Someone's mobile phone is near a microphone. I haven't heard that sound since like the late 1990s, but we can hear it. Yeah, it's gone now.
Yeah, no, this is great. I'm really excited to see this. The tool that I've been building, that we're gonna, we'll talk about it another time, because I don't want to take your show, but the tool I've been building is basically like NPM for open hardware. I've been trying to build a sort of a package manager that handles a bunch of those kind of functions wrapped around OKH. And I would love to figure out how to integrate it with what you're doing, because I think the tools you've been building are pretty cool. Obviously, I'll look through your repositories and so on. But yeah, I guess I'm trying to figure out like what are the integration points, and sort of where is it documented, so I can kind of start poking at it.
One second. So the thing is that currently the repository, let me double check with, did you share the link? Yeah, Peter, right?
Yeah.
Did you share that already? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So no, the one where you can find basically the data that we're working with. So that definitely would help, I think. Or Robin, if you could share that. Apart from that, the next question is really to see like what kind of integrations are possible with the tools on the new version of the Open Know-how. One thing that came up, and maybe this is a good bridging point to what I was about to tell you, that we already had an application ongoing now to see how we can continue this kind of work via an LNet foundation, right? But then we also were looking into creating for that new standard an editor. So because of course you can already use the template created, right? You can, as usual, create the manifest file, and then I mean, it's possible already, right? We know that way, but I think for most people, also the ones working with open source hardware, they're not too much into that kind of format, right? So even if it's human readable, it's still a bit unhandy. So we thought if we already have gone that far, like really improving the standard itself, making it possible to automate the whole thing, why not then also build a front end on top to basically have this a little bit more easy to handle. And that's the one that currently can be found on that repository that Peter just stumbled up on. It's called the OSH editor. 1 second, let me share the link. And it's very early stage. So 1 second. Yeah, you can see even there are still open issues that we want to close, but this is the one that we have been whoops, that was, I wanted to send out a message too. Anyway, you can have this link too. So this is really about trying to figure out, you can run this already locally if you want. And I'll double check if we can have this also as a running demo website. But again, like, because it's so focused on Open Know-how specific things, I think it would be really good if we could have that on a URL that's based on the Open Know-how context. So not another open source ecology domain. So it would be really good if we could integrate that in the official domain logic there. Or even Internet of Production can host it there. But yeah, if you want to test it, please feel free to, you can just basically install it locally and then have a look. It's super simple right now. Like, it's really the basics and the ideas, and this will still happen. So that's why I wanted to give you a little sneak preview here. If you go to the search, you enter a search term, and then you see, when you open any of those project results that you find, you open that sub page that you find. By the way, we also created the URL in a way, even though it's open link data, you can now point with a URL to that page of the search results. So it's really helpful, I think. Then you can actually see that there is a preview of buttons, which is called, you can download the manifest file in an automated way, right? So even for the projects that were just scraped from the internet, you can download the manifest file and improve it, and then add the improved version to the repository. So will be found next time. But there's also a button which is called Edit TOML basically right now. So it might be named differently in the future, but basically the idea was so that you do not have to import, edit, and then export the manifest file. You can just hit that button from that search result, and you can start with the data that's already present of the project. So
nice.
Especially, let's take a few examples. I mean, for example, if you looking on those open source medical devices, right? And I know there are a bunch of projects that are already mapped. And if they're already in the database, then we can just go from there and say, hey, I want to improve that manifest file. I have no clue about the code part, so I'll just hit that button, and then I'm able to, to basically edit the data, export, and then either send it to the developer, or I am the developer and can just add it to my repository. And the next round of scraping the data will then present an updated set of data, right? So that we have a closed circle. That's basically the idea, right?
Oh,
So
that's great.
and that's what we have been working on. I mean, this is not a part of the funding anymore, right? So we're doing this in the free time, and then whenever it's ready, it's ready. But I mean, you can already test it, and it's already there, and it's eventually we even will have funding with that NLNet project fund to improve that really properly. But for that, it would be good to have a bit more idea what the needs are, what we should improve, what we should focus on. And so, that could be something where we need people's input.
The tool I've been building may be helpful to you there.
Really interesting. Okay.
So one of the things that this system I've been building does is I was trying to figure out how to make it easier for people who want to work with the OKH ecosystem to engage with it without having to kind of manually translate their existing project into that format. Or to do that for projects that are already out there in the open source ecosystem that no one is officially maintaining, so you just kind of have to do it. And so I built a system that you can point to. At this point, it supports GitHub and GitLab, but adding other platform support should be fairly easy. I think Codeberg is next on the list. But so here, it's probably easier to demonstrate. Let me screen share with you. Where are we?
We're going to get a sneak preview of your January community call, Nathan, I think.
Yeah.
And then we have to get to Robert.
Yes. So can you see my code editor? So for example, as a test, I recently did this. I pointed my system at the OpenFlexure microscope project. And it generated automatically this manifest with all of the files using the Losh OKH format. It categorized and sort of crawled all of the links to all of the files in that manifest, built a local directory structure, and populated it. So that's all from one command.
Wow.
It uses a sort of 4-layer approach to sort of fill that out. So there's, and the layers are kind of go in like increasing level of computational expensiveness. So it you know, there's the direct matching layer, which is straight string comparison. And then for things where that's not well suited, it has heuristics where it's like, okay, here's a bunch of synonyms and word lists. If it's in here, it means this. Below that is an NLP layer that's using, you know, vector embeddings to find related terms and semantically similar terms. And then below that is a layer that uses an LLM to kind of parse a little bit harder things to pull out. So like, for example, function, description, and intended use rarely are deliberately called out. Often it's sort of something in the README somewhere that describes it vaguely. So the LLM can pull that out pretty accurately.
Thanks, Nathan. And
can you share? Did you share the link? Yeah, I think I found it. It's in the chat, right?
No, and I should let everyone know that earlier today, Nathan shared a summary of what he's been working on in a way that makes it easier for me to understand. And so we'll be sharing some of that as we run up to the January community call. But I'm particularly keen to, you know, with, you know, particularly for these two groups, for Open-Source Ecology Germany, for Nathan to be in touch. So thank you for being able to join today, Nathan. I know it's early for you. Robert, you've had your hand up for a while. I can't remember if you were able to make the June community call or if this is your first time seeing some of this work. But please fire away with your feedback or your comments or questions.
Thank you. Well, I think, yeah, I might have been there. So obviously Public Invention and open source medical supplies are very supportive of this work. We think the discoverability and the OKH are extremely important. We've been supporting the OKH for a long time. And in fact, we curated a repo that has 237 OKHs in it, but they're not in the index yet. And so I'm here to make a plea to please place those in the index. In a way, these things are better than, you know, things that are automatically scraped, because this was curated by a real human being specifically in support of the OKH format. We made the OKH format by hand for these projects for that purpose. And so I think, you know, the search engine that Losh has created, I'm calling it that, maybe other people created it, you know, is really important, but it's also really important that it index the available OKHs.
Robin, you're nodding your head there. Do you want to respond to that? I know you were recently on a podcast with Victoria, Jakra, and Nathan, where I think it was the Hardware X thing, where there was another comment of like, Oh, but look at all of these ones that we have as well that could also be included somehow. Like, do you want to respond to that?
I thought they were already there, but if they're not, then I'm sorry. I'll try to put them there.
That's a pretty comprehensive answer. Yeah. And the idea with the search is that it would discover them anyway. Sorry, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically that if you find something that's still missing, I had a bunch of these reports to Robin too, because he's really looking at lots of the data sets that are available, and sometimes this might slip through. So if anything is missing, which you think should be discoverable right now, then share the URL through a ticket or just send it to Robin directly, because for him it's a bit of work, of course, to redo the scraping again. We might need to add a new source because we're currently searching specific repositories or domains, basically. One of it was, by the way, Thingiverse, just for testing, but I think we're gonna leave that in the future because it's a lot of projects that are, well, let's say the quality is really poor in terms of open hardware and usability and so on. So it's much more valuable to have in the future projects that are manually created, basically, in that sense. So thank you, Robert. I think those kind of projects are really, really, really valuable. And this is actually what we want to focus in the future. We have been doing this massive data scraping to see where the limits are with open link data, and also to know what we need to improve in order to handle hundreds of thousands of hardware projects. I think we have proven that point. So there's work to do. But in general, now the quality part is really the one we want to focus on, so that we really handpick the best of the best open source hardware projects to make them as best as possible visible on the search engine. So that's actually the next step. So if that's actually the case, that you cannot find it through the search, make that your priority to ping Robin 2 times, 3 times if necessary, but it's definitely okay. We will fix that because they should be there.
Well,
thanks. And before we go to Victoria's question in the chat, let's go back to Robert.
Yeah, so we did create an issue, although fairly recently, because Maren was working with Robin, so I thought it was going to be done. But I want to make sure I created it on the correct GitHub repo, because there are a lot of them where one could do it. And also I recommend that a notice be added to the main page for how people can request that additional data sources be indexed. Robin, did you see the issue that I created? Did I create it in the right place? I think you should have a very clear path on how to do that.
I saw an email once, which probably came to me from that issue. So
okay, well, what repo is the best repo to put that on?
I mean, I would probably use the right one. What repo?
So I guess you can either put it on the actual search engine site repository, or you put it on the Open Know-how repository, which is the more central point of entry, I think. So that's the one that I think will also be more present for Robin, right? Because most of the linked tools are also then raised there. So yeah, I would actually say this. Did you put the issue on Codeberg, or did you put it on GitHub?
I put it on GitHub.
Yeah, then it's probably Open Know-how repository. So
maybe yes, it's on the
for the ease. I didn't see it yet, so maybe you can share the link so that we can then have that on our radar. Yeah, see, so that's the Open Know-how repository.
Thanks. Peter, are you raising your hand in response to this point, or can we go on to Victoria's point?
Maybe better just Victoria first. Yeah.
Thanks. Victoria, you've asked if there will eventually be a filter feature in the chat message here, but you've raised your hand. Are you able to speak, to unmute?
Yes, and in my defense, I'll just be very transparent that I'm the least technically knowledgeable person on this call in terms of programming. So I apologize if this has already been addressed. But the first question is, if there is a way for OKHs or other repositories, and I remember Julian mentioned this in June, to be submitted to be part of this search mechanism. Will the organization and filtering features present in those private repositories be maintained? You know, if things are categorized a certain way, does that mean it remains categorized? And secondly, is there ever where someone who stumbles upon this, you know, search mechanism can filter, you know, by what they're looking for? Let's say they want to find anything that's medical, all right, that's within the database, because that would probably be one of the #1 searches people use. And gosh, I had another question. Let's start with that, and then I'll think of my third thing.
So Peter, do you want to pick this up? Some of it may have been addressed already, but
Yeah, so I think you asked this last time as well, and those would be really good additions. Sorry.
Peter, sorry.
Yeah. I see my microphone going up, and you know, but I missed the red cross through it. Okay, cool. Yeah, so yeah, I think you asked this last time as well. So and so that unfortunately hasn't been part of the project yet. So we were quite happy with what we achieved in this short amount of time. But yeah, these are all great additions. Yeah, and should be picked up, I guess, by follow-up projects. I think Nathan's tool with the LLMs could perhaps create these kinds of tags that allows you to filter these kinds of things. Well, now that I'm on that topic anyway, so one of the things that I wanted to ask, so Nathan asked, you know, is there any documentation? Yeah, so the documentation is more or less in the repositories, but what would you, is there anything specific that you would need from us to be able to use the knowledge? So for example, I saw you use the OKH Lush version. So I guess it would be good to maybe try to adhere to the new Open Know-how standard. The Lush one was also, I think, the semantic data version, but we took it one step further. So that would be a nice point of collaboration, I guess. But are you looking for specific forms of documentation for that?
That's to me.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, so how to put it? The system that I built is kind of essentially like it has an internal data model. It just has a Python data class that is the kind of like, you know, the canonical OKH that it works from. And so, you know, I built it with the understanding that that would change and that I would not be, you know, like that's a living standard. And so as that standard evolves and is improved, you know, kind of doing a version migration and updating the system to use that is, you know, is doable given how the whole thing is built. You know, if there's, you know, a JSON file that says this is the, you know, the new canonical format, that's relatively easy to integrate. If it's something else, you know, I don't think I can work with RDS directly at this point, but I could probably expand it to do so.
So I think I shared a very crucial link for you in the chat. Please check it out. It's pointing to the OKH JSON schema. So I think the JSON schema is the one that you want to use. It's at least also the source that we are using for the editor now. So whenever the standard updates, this gets updated, and for that, it helps like keeping the standard always up to date, right? So I mean, especially if we expand the Open Know-how standard, right? I mean, it might happen in the future. We might want to improve it a little bit further, right? So that's why we try to find this time, because I know that there were other editors before. Yeah, I've researched them, I've studied them, I've looked at them. The problem is whenever we update the standard, we're standing at the same problem again to create a new editor with a new. So we tried this time to build upon a source that's more accurate and that's more up to date, and will also update once the standard itself will be updated. Yeah. So yeah, I think this might be a good source for you too. If I'm missing something, Robin, please jump in, okay? Because I'm also not the software developer behind all that, but still, I think this is what I have been looking for to tell the editor developers to have as a source, because this is more sustainable that way, right? Yeah. So
thanks, guys.
Yeah, that being said, it's still good if we could update the documentation on the Open Know-how website, right? Or in the Internet of Production website section.
Nathan and I'll pick that up as well, because obviously Robert's also asking about it as well, and it would be better if it was reflected on the main site as well as in GitHub. Thanks, guys, for the conversation on that. Victoria, have you remembered your next question?
Yes, and I'm bringing back an email conversation we had with Robin after the last community call, which was that the open hardware knowledge that Hardware X has is not crawlable because it's in PDF. And I understand the limits of the project that OSEG has been working on. And there may be sections that other organizations or additional funding need to provide, but I just want to make a note that there's a vast amount of open source, published information designs that are in PDF format. So would then the solution for this be that a human being needs to categorize that knowledge into a machine readable format that could then be crawled by the search engine?
PDFs are pretty easily parsable through, like there's a number of tools for making those parsable. There's some good Python libraries, and yeah, that's very doable. I think PyPDF will do it.
So would integrating Hardware X, I guess the easy word to say database, is that something that is easy to do, or is that like a big project that?
No.
Let's go to Robin, except he looks a bit frozen.
Oh.
And we can hear you, Robin. Oh, there you are.
Ah, okay. Oh, now I have to. So the problem is not just that it's in PDF, but there's just no sources there. They have PDFs which are publications, but that are not sources. So it is just by definition, it is not open source. For it to be open source, the sources would have to be available in a format, and of course, optimally also on a platform where collaboration would be possible. And then that platform would also be easily, would most likely be more easily scrapable and crawlable and indexable, or whatever you want.
It sounds
And
like you spent some time looking at this, Robin, and thanks for doing that already. Let's
I mean, we had the same talk last time, and people were not happy with my this response, but it's still the same response.
yeah. So I think there's there may actually need to be some human element here, Victoria, and we're not sure what that human element is at the moment, but there may need to be something introduced here to solve that problem. We have some questions from Vicky, but before we go to Vicky, Robert, do you want to respond on this conversation?
Well, yeah, I mean, I personally believe the Hardware X articles represent excellent OKHs, except that they're not in the right format. I mean, by definition, OKH articles allow complete reproducibility of whatever device is being built. I mean, you can't get published in Hardware X if it's not completely open source. And I know this because I've published 3 papers there. It's the article itself constitutes better build instructions than you will find in almost any other OKH, the documentation linked in any other OKH. I mean, I think if the Hardware X articles were added to the index, whether automatically or through curation, that would be a tremendous, huge boost in the discoverable open source machinery that could be made by the public.
I mean,
If there are no sources, it cannot be open source. It doesn't matter how good the documentation is or how much it is reproducible. If there are no sources, it's not open source. It can't be.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the word you're saying. I mean, they're all open source. Hardware X demands that it be open source.
So I think there may be a difference in definition on what the source is, because I think I'm hearing Robert say the paper is the source. And
yes.
It's not.
Whereas
PDF is never a source.
So I think we've got a difference of opinion there. Yeah.
It may be that, well, if someone is objecting to the PDF format being open source, okay, we just need to translate the PDF into a different format. But the human content of that PDF is open source. I mean, it allows someone legally to construct whatever device in question is, and they have extremely good quality control. It's a peer-reviewed journal. If you don't provide good build instructions, you won't get published in Hardware X.
Okay, but can I better understand that, Robert? Because I think we are really talking different things here. So because I'm a mechanical engineer, right? So I'm looking for interesting open source hardware.
Yes.
And I had a bunch of looks on projects on Hardware X. And yes, the peer-reviewed documents, they're really good in terms of reading the successes that those people might have had. And they're defining the object in text form, it's giving some graphic overview and so on. But at least the ones that I have been looking at, they did not provide the source files for the CAD and for the actual hardware drive. So if I want to contribute to those hardware developments, not just have a look, if I want to actually change something, for example, I want to change the hardware to my actual needs, and I want to build up on the hardware documentation that they are looking at, I mean, maybe I'm looking at the wrong projects, but you can refer to the ones that we should tackle, but then it's more a question of maybe collecting the good ones manually instead of auto-scraping all of it and then having like 80 or 90% not really available hardware there, right? Because that would not help us in the long run. I mean, unless our aim is to design a platform where we find good hardware to reverse engineer. I mean, it could be another target group that we can aim at, looking for proper hardware that is easy to reverse engineer.
I mean, I think I understand our difference of opinion here. Okay, you may be right. I mean, the articles that I wrote and the manifesto of Hardware X it should be repeatable. And it has a specific section in the format for build instructions that you have to provide. And it has a section where you have to provide a bill of materials and design files. Now, they may have published articles where they did not insist upon those things being properly filled out. I would be skeptical if 90% of those articles did not fill those out, but I haven't actually looked. I've only looked at, a small number of articles and the ones that I wrote. Okay, so I think, perhaps there is a legitimate disagreement here. Some of the Hardware X articles might not be good enough, but some of them are, and according to what the journal is attempting to achieve, they should achieve that thing. Now, if this is a question of requiring curation, let's talk about that in email, because that's possible. I mean, after all, there aren't that many Hardware X articles, right? I mean, they're probably only 600 or something like that.
I talked to the maintainer of Hardware X, and I asked them about the sources and basically the sources for the articles. So the sources in that situation to me would usually be a LibreOffice document or so, from which then the PDF is generated. And I think they have some kind of templates for that, and they could just, whenever someone publishes, they could like publish the sources. And I asked
no. So those PDFs are generally made from LaTeX files.
Well, then the LaTeX file, that's also okay. I mean, that would then be if they could like require these LaTeX files to be there on the site also, and especially if they would be there in a way that other people could collaborate, then, well, yeah, okay.
Okay, thanks. We'll so there's the perennial problem of PDFs, the use of PDFs. I think the idea that there is some work needed to try and improve the openness of the Hardware X resource, the contribution to the open hardware ecosystem makes sense to me, because I think the fact that they may contain very good build instructions is something we don't want to lose, but I want to make sure that the design files are all linked and all of that the kind of things that we point at with the Open Know-how manifest will be there. So that's there's an area of work, and because I'm a fundraiser, I'm feeling a little bit of a project coming on here that maybe some resource could be put into solving this particular problem, so that and there's already ideas in the chat about different approaches, scales of openness on this. So let's leave that particular conversation for the moment, and just to make sure that we don't dwell on it for too long and skip some of the other questions. We have a question from Vicky about actually using the search engine. So Vicky, are you able to speak? Do you want to speak to your question?
Yeah, and I hope it's a simple one. So I was looking for desks, right? Because there's this project about circular economy, reusing desks, yada, yada, yada. So when I search for desk, it gives me everything that also includes desktop. So I was like, yeah, okay, let me look for table. Then gives me everything that's portable. And I find this hilarious, but I don't want to see all portable devices and anything that's a desktop 3D printer or whatever desktop thing. I just want to see desks or tables. So what do I have to put into the search bar? I tried desk minus desktop. That wasn't it. What do I put there?
So who would like to take that question on? Thanks, Vicky.
I think, I mean, I've not tried it, but I imagine it would not be possible the way it is right now.
No. Okay, I'll hack it. Thank you, Roman.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Right now it's still at the demo stage that you can search specific terms, not necessarily all the features that current search engines deliver, right? Because that will need much more development time in order to come up with all the different word filters, because that also needs to run through the database basically of the linked open data. And again, we had specifically for the front end side, this project had just very limited resources to do all that. So I mean, the data is in the database, right? So I mean, it's just a question of addressing the content of the database properly to filter out the right way. Right now, we've focused more on actually delivering as much results as possible, because open source hardware is hard to find. But if you're looking for very specific words, it's still not optimized for that. So we should do that. But again, it's possible to build up on the platform that we have started, right? So it's available on Codeberg. And in future, let's say home of that search platform is also not yet decided, right? So who will be maintaining it, who will be hosting it, and so on. So this is kind of the open question that we still have to tackle. It's also not made for super scaling. So if we, for example, had hundreds or thousands of requests on that page, I'm pretty sure at some point it would go down. So it's not yet like a super high powerful search engine. It's really just a demo right now. But I mean, the
Thanks for that
database is
response,
there.
Tim, and
So
and your work's been incredible. So the humility in your response as well is impressive. You got some comments from Julian, who's unable to speak. I believe he's on a train heading to Brussels, but he's got some questions about that scaling thing, which I think you've spoken to. But actually, you're talking about the sort of the demand on the search tool.
I mean, I'm talking about both, right? If you're scaling up the
yeah.
database, if you want to have always accurate data in the database, so the scraping has to happen lots of times. I mean, it took us weeks to scrape, for example, the data from Thingiverse and stuff. Like multiple accounts were deleted and so on, because those platforms are not really made for scraping, right? They don't want you to scrape their data. So it's really hard. GitHub is the same, by the way. So it's really hard to get this data accurately and on a regular basis into our database. And therefore it is also the reason why we have to really think creatively on how we will be maintaining such a database in the future. And in best case, we find people like Robert that are really maintaining and facilitating actual quality open source hardware projects that are meant to be scraped on a respective platform or have their manifest files up to date. So, I mean, this would be the best possible outcome, right? If we have lots of developers of open source hardware or facilitating organizations that help us with accurate data. This would also help with the filtering, by the way. We had this filter question, I think, also in the chat, right? Because the Open Know-how standard provides the possibility to add categories like tags and like generally make sure that the technology is categorized and put in the right way. You can add all kinds of data already in the Open Know-how standard. But if you scrape the data from those platforms that have no manifest file with this information in it, it's really, really little what we get out, right? Because the data that you can actually automate is little. So the future of this being accurate and possible to filter in lots of ways will depend on people adding their manifest files to the repository. I mean, I still remember the idea from Julian Sterling last call that we had. Like, it would be nice to have those pipelines running also, so that we find a technical way for those projects to push the data to the platform, to the database. But this is also yet not developed, right? So, but this is definitely something where we have open technical issues on, so that we can tackle them. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and thanks for saying that as well. Before we come, I actually feel like I want to dive into, given the group that we have here, dive into a little bit about the, Robert's thoughts on ontologies and the future of ontologies. But before we do that, let's go to Sam's question about embedding the search engine in third-party sites. Sam, do you want to speak to your question?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just as it sounds, really, you know, it's great that it works when people come to you, but can this search function, you know, be embedded into other sites?
Then what do you think, or Robin?
I would say, I mean, it could, but I don't think anyone in the state it is now would probably be ready to do that. I mean, because everything is open source, also the data is open source and the way to collect the data. So I think it makes sense to have a better, like more performant database system and more polished interface, which I think could be relatively easy for people that are experts in these things, which we are not. Yeah.
You're also humble, Robin. You're much more of an expert than I would be. And yeah, so that question was about embedding in other sites. What's really interesting to me over the course of this call is everyone is really excited about this. Like this search engine. It's like, can we add this? Can we do that? Can we have this feature? Like, and it's about doing. Can we make sure it gets more data? You know, and so the you know, I think you can be really proud of the enthusiasm that it's generating, and it certainly tells me that there's need to invest in this area a bit more. I would like some of the, you know, search companies to take an interest in what we've done here as a way of adopting the open know-how standard more broadly, remembering that one of the reasons we're building the search tool at all is to show that it can be done and how useful it is. Does anybody have any other burning questions? Because otherwise I think I might you know, go to this question of ontologies, because we heard from Nathan about his approach, which we'll hear more about on his community call. And he showed us a little bit of that, but the focus on ontologies. And Robert, do you want to sort of say what you mean about the idea of the age of ontologies?
Yeah, well,
your thoughts on that, more philosophical perhaps.
Yeah. So at Helpful Engineering, we tried for several years to make what would be called an atomized approach to making OKHs, where you say specifically what tools and what bill of material items are using. And of course, it becomes unclear what those should be. So we actually tried to use the Wikidata definition of those nouns, which is interesting. But in the end, it's a failure. And now that we have cheap embedded vectors that can tell us, you know, that a hammer and a mallet are approximately synonyms, although they're not exactly the same thing, we're essentially abandoning the approach of trying to build more and more detailed standards and more specification in the things. And our idea is to use artificial intelligence, which is kind of a big word for textual search, but textual search, which is synonym aware on the basis of large language models and embedded vectors, to do these kinds of matching things. So, you know, for example, Victoria said we want to filter on medical, right? Well, I would accept if you put in the word medical, 99% of the things are medical, and every once in a while you get a mismatch because the word medical appears in, you know, the name of a cookie recipe or something like that. And I think this is both easier and more powerful, because one thing this call demonstrates is there aren't enough human beings, or there isn't enough money out there to curate all of the things that need to be curated, right? So we have to solve this problem in a different way. But I believe that technology is possible. I mean, like, if we wanted to be radical, we would say, you don't need an OKH standard. You just need a document. And we'll let AI figure out what the license is from the document. We'll let it figure out what the bill of materials is. We'll do all that stuff. I personally don't think that's a good idea. I support the OKH in its current form, but I don't believe we can make progress by like constantly elaborating new ontologies and trying to make finer and finer divisions of things. What we need to do is to use artificial intelligence to make these things more robust. Thank you. Sorry if I'm on a soapbox.
No. It's an interesting perspective, and certainly I've been wondering about the future of all of these platforms that host designs, because it may just be that actually you speak to AIs in the future, not large language models, but large hardware models, perhaps, that know all of the world's physics and know all of the world's patents and know all of the world's materials or whatever, and you just say, make me a ram pump or something, and then there's the design from the ram pump, generated from first principles rather than from pre-existing designs. Anyway, what do we think about Robert's perspective there, and does it help us potentially move forward? Yes, we can export the chat, Tim. Thanks. Emilio, I know you've just joined the call recently, but I'd be interested in your thoughts on. I know you're a person who thinks about ontologies a lot as Apropedia.
I think it's using AI is very useful in terms of reading the documentation, deriving a common set of vocabulary, and the big problem with building the ontologies is that language tends to be divergent all the time. So you can have, in our case, we have, you have a solar cooker, a biochar cooker. Like there are so many different ways of describing things, and at one point it gets to, I agree with Robert that you have to be careful not to be too specific about things, because then the taxonomy does not, it's not useful anymore. So that's one thing. I think it's important to start building, start thinking about the vocabulary. And I think that's where, a couple hundred years ago, the Dewey Decimal System started doing, and also I think the patents database of WIPO also has some like common vocabulary of categories, and people agreed on what goes into what. So I think, so a couple of things. One is that there is an item that there was a parameter called instance of. So you can say, for example, this documentation is an instance of a 3D printer, for example. Then whether you use a hyphen to, between 3D and printer, et cetera, that's where my second comment comes, that it just has to come into the practice of building a dictionary of common words and to actually use it. So I think the open hardware, the Open Know-how standard is pretty robust, and that we can start building from it. But the how to sort out these problems of finding what we want comes down to sitting down, categorizing, like using the tool, like from using the tool and providing, for example, for real use cases, then we'll be able to sort them out. So I think it's more about having more working to the adoption and then creating the real use cases for it.
If I can just
Thanks, Emilio.
add a brief comment on
Nathan,
that, just as someone who works with AI professionally most of the time these days. I think the distinction here is between AI / large language models and vector embeddings, and the two are often found together, but they're very different things. You know, the Google search has been using vector embeddings for years prior to any kind of LLM development. That's just semantic search. You know, there's a couple places where LLMs are actually very interesting in terms of like translating from, you know, unstructured documents or documents that are structured outside of the OKH standard and translating it into the OKH standard. You know, there's some interesting ways to do that and make that a little easier for us on our end to kind of integrate outside data. But I wouldn't lean too heavily on AI as a you know, catch-all.
Thanks. The debate on AI will continue. Let's not spend too much longer on that. I'm just looking through the chat to see if there's any issues that have been raised that we haven't talked about. Vicky's suggesting that we publish about this tool, possibly in Hardware X. Who knows? I think we've talked about a few aspects of what we want to do next with the search. And when I review this call, I'll be able to pick up ideas of what happens next. The resource that has gone into it from NGI Search is, I would say, only a portion of the effort of compensating the effort that these guys have put in. I think the data, as well as the tools that you've generated, could be incredibly powerful for the rest of the community. So really, really grateful for sharing that. And I think the January call with Nathan would be quite interesting for the wider community to hear about what you've been doing, Nathan, to begin to look at OKHs and the Open Know-how standard as well. But I think unless there's anything else people want to discuss today, we should probably draw to a close.
That sounds good to me. I think the one question I would have here, and I realize this is you probably don't have the sufficient information to answer it, but on the off chance that anyone has ideas, the sort of, you know, hardware engine package manager thing that I've been building, you know, likewise with the search engine is, you know, demonstratable but not perfectly polished. It's not a 1.0 release, obviously. I have a list of to-dos, but in advance of the January session, if there's anything where people were like, oh, it would be great if it did this, tell me now. I could probably have it done by then. You know, I'm open to suggestions. I would love to have this be something that fits better with the ecosystem of tools y'all are developing. You know, like, does it need
Thanks for saying that, Nathan.
or RDF or whatever?
Yeah, I was hoping you might say something like that. I didn't want to say it for you, but I know you've told me over the last couple of weeks hearing about it that you're keen to work with people, share what you've done, engage with people on it. So thanks for saying that.
Yeah, of course.
Just now. Okay, well, I'm going to bring the community call to a close. I really, really want to thank Robin, Peter, and Tim for presenting again all of this this work. I love having these tools. This is the point of the Alliance, you know, trying to find funding to my camera's off. I'll switch my camera back on. Trying to find funding to you know, different organizations working together and collaborating. I know we have work to do with the Internet of Production website and making it really clear where we are with the Open Know-how standard, the discoverability standard at least, the portability tools, and we haven't even started on the interactivity, but we've commissioned a report into it. Those other standards which we've been looking at, are also not well represented on the website yet. So yeah, we've Nathan, Tim, and I have all struggled to try and figure out how to edit the internet production website, which is somewhat of an embarrassing thing for a technology-orientated organization, but we'll get there eventually. And it's becoming more of a priority for me as well, if I may say. So I've mentioned already the next community calls that are coming up. The next one's on the people and skills standard with Sarah. Let me go back, and Lewis Holbrook. I go back to those QR codes, those dates. So 17th of December. Again, this is going to be a little bit like a demo of a system. And then Nathan's talk on the 14th of January. I want to plug the events on distributed quality control, quality assurance, quality management. We're looking for ideas about how to do this. So I want to ask for your ideas for people who might come along and contribute to those. And we have reports of what we've done recently in the newsletters. For those of you who joined later, there's some quick updates there. But yeah, thank you again to our speakers. Thanks for joining. It's and quite frankly for bearing with me, because it's nearly 3:45 in the morning here in Sydney. So I'm grateful for you if I've been a bit garbled as I've been hosting today. Well done, Robin. Well done, Tim. Well done, Peter. Thank you very much indeed. Bye for now.